On this episode, rockets continue to fly as the Wardens make what could be their final push in War 90. An interview with members of the French-based KRGG regiment on the first Warden rocket of the war. The annual ANZAC Day arrives, with the Foxhole regiment of the same name once again paying its respects, along with other members of the Foxhole community. Also, more of your stories from the PressCorps Discord in Submissions Review. Live from Studio A in PressCorps World Headquarters, this is your weekly review of the Foxhole War. This is Pressing Matters. Morning, afternoon, or evening. For the PressCorps, I'm Geoffrey Jennings. Here in the 90th conflict of the Foxhole War, it's day 770. Rockets continue to fly and eliminate major targets, while the Warden offensive continues over 350 days in with startling results. Combined deaths so far total over 3.3 million, with the Warden suffering 4% more casualties, 3 percentage points down from the previous episode, accentuating the breakdown of the Colonial line. The region with the highest combined death count so far is still Callahan's Passage at over 317,000 combined dead, and will likely continue to be Cal's Pass given the rapid thrust deep into Colonial territory. For the record, that's approximately 9% of all deaths taking place in Cal's Pass. However, in the last hour, 4,400 have been lost to the current fighting, with the Colonials suffering as much as 20% more of those deaths. As of this report, the Wardens are only 4 victory points away from taking War 90 for their own, with 26 out of 30 victory points needed. It should be noted that simply capturing the victory point is not enough. The Wardens will need 30 simultaneous Tier 3 victory points. However, rockets hitting victory points will lower that required number. Of the 2 rockets left in play, both are in Warden territory. Looking at the front lines now, the Wardens have cut immensely deep into Legionary strongholds, with the current high watermark being Fort Ember in Fisherman's Row. A central thrust stretching all the way back from the central regions. The Colonials are still managing to hold out somewhat in regions such as the Moors, as well as all the way down south in Red River, the site of the Cannonsmoke rocket, which we will cover shortly. However, this central thrust has managed to completely collapse the Colonial line, with the Legionary forces scrambling with whatever way they can to try and mount some defense. At this point, it may simply be a delaying action. However, with the use of the rockets, those delaying actions may just be enough to prolong this war for as long as possible. And we'll get into that in just a bit now. 4 ballistic rocket superweapons have been detonated so far, 3 since our last episode, and a majority of them in the south-central area of the war zone. The second rocket launched was by the Wardens, hitting Cannonsmoke in Red River, which we'll discuss later, by the KRGG or Krieg regiment. The third rocket launched on day 605 was by a Colonial anti-rocket operation, much like their first rocket that struck the Evil Eye rocket site. This time, the rocket destroyed the Blackwing rocket site just south of Sataria in Great March, which had fallen into Warden hands approximately day 548, with the capture of the town. Despite Colonial attempts to recapture the site and the region, it appears the decision was made to use a rocket to take another one out. The fourth rocket was launched by the Colonials on day 653 from Faranic Coast, striking Bakay Ridge town base in Calakai, along with its eastern safe house in a scorched earth maneuver, after the Wardens had successfully surrounded the river town and cut it off from supply. Prior to the Colonial launch, however, the Colonial garrison had sent a communique to the Wardens south of the river. A communique being, to Warden Officer Commanding Bakay besieging forces. Honorable greetings from the garrison and citizens of Bakay. Over the mountains of Sievish corpses, we salute you for a battle well fought. This courier brings a message under a flag of parley, so we ask that you treat him according to the conventions of honorable combat. The message follows. If Warden soldiers set foot inside Bouquet Town Hall, Colonial rocket artillery forces will destroy the city along with all of the invaders. Our citizens would rather die free under the green flag of the Republic than live to bow their heads before the Northern banner, on their knees as Warden jackboots march through the streets. The city is soaked in the blood of Masayan and Valayan martyrs, and we swear to either liberate our city or die in its defense alongside our enemies. Signed, Colonial Defense Council, Bouquet, Valayan Northern Military District. That is the long form of the local Colonial garrison there in Bouquet Ridge. The Wardens did receive this message successfully and responded in kind to the Colonial officer, Bouquet Ridge. Greetings from the high and low ground. Our men across the bridge eat well of fresh meals and sleep in warm camp. Our assurances that your courier is well treated in camp, despite the feeling of our men towards him and the government he represents. His safe return carrying our message will be the proof of his treatment. In regards to the threat of rocket artillery and destruction, it is a small price to pay to kick you out of Siva and dismantle the hegemony you hold over Veli. Our spiritual brothers to the south, it brings us no joy to see the destruction that you have shown to our land. But fear not, we offer you the taste of peace. Surrender and you will be treated well. You need not feast on the rotten corpses of rats. You may sleep in warm tents and enjoy an honorable and respectable place with the prisoners we have so far accrued upon the ridge. Signed, Warden Command and Control, Bouquet Ridge, Joint Chiefs of Staff, Southern Battle Group, JCSSB. Alternatively, nuts. With those messages being sent, the Colonials went ahead and launched the rocket, hitting Bouquet Ridge on day 653, as mentioned earlier. After that, the rest of the region quickly fell into Sivish hands, and the offensive continuing further westward. Again, three of the last rockets, all hitting in the south central area of the war zone, devastating to that portion of the battle, no doubt, and consequently enough, the Wardens. Interestingly enough, the Wardens have only managed to break through in the central lateral position towards Pharaonic Coast and Fisherman's Row. But if any Colonial counterattack, as absolutely paper-thin as that seems likely, if any Colonial counterattack does manage to get on its feet, it is unlikely that it will happen in the south. Almost all of this reporting has been made possible through the help of FoxholeStats.com. That's FoxholeStats.com, run by the ever-venerable Hayden. So much information on that website, and so much information that we managed to fall back on again and again. The number of times we have closed and reopened FoxholeStats.com while doing much of this research is staggering. So please make sure to favorite that site. If you follow this war, if you follow the PressCorps, make sure you also follow FoxholeStats.com. Moving into our first story, our top story here, the Krieg Regiment, known by their tags KRGG, have taken responsibility for the second rocket launched of War 90, striking the industrial town of Cannonsmoke in Red River and taking out its town base, northeast safe house, coastal gun, seaport, and all three shipyards. Since then, the offensive have moved further west, but the effects of such a strike are still being felt. Joining us now are KRGG members, Krieg members, and I'm going to butcher your names here, Hidetaro and Xyara. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Excellent. I will continue to adjust levels here for our audience, but yes, opening up here for both of you. Just to clarify, KRGG does stand for Krieg, and that's Krieg with 2 Gs, I believe?
Yes.
And that is because this is a kind of a fusion, kind of a merger between the two regiments, I believe, before?
Exactly, between KGG and Krieg.
And both of those regiments were based French?
Only KGG was based French.
Yeah, Craig is international regiment.
Understood. All right. Well, moving on to the rocket here, what was the decision, getting right to the heart of the question, what was the decision to strike Cannonsmoke in Red River as opposed to other spots, such as in Lochmore or the Moors?
We tried to nuke Ashfield earlier that day. We did an operation that failed. And then we switched to Cannonsmoke to cut the southern lodge to Baker Ridge to fully encircle the region and to took it faster.
If I'm understanding this correctly, by the time the Cannonsmoke rocket was chosen, or the Cannonsmoke was chosen as the target, Bakai Ridge and Kalakai had already been surrounded.
Yeah, but some lodge was still getting in, so we wanted it to be more quick. So
interesting. So it seems both of these targets were in conjunction. This is a bigger story than I guess we first realized.
Yeah.
Well, it's certainly the south central portion of the entire war zone here has certainly had its fill of rockets. I doubt any more will be flying in that sector, but we will see. But yes, what was the operation like to actually target the town? Was it a particularly difficult operation? Was it done by land or by sea?
The first operation we started from Legion Ranch in Arquithia. And we got all the way up to Ashford, and we tried to nuke Ashtown.
Yeah, we passed through Great March to avoid Kalokai Q, and then we went into Red River, all the way north, hugging the border, and then we managed to get on the Ashford beach, and then we got basically destroyed.
So I guess by the time you came to Cannonsmoke, this was your third choice, or perhaps?
This was the third choice, yeah.
Yeah.
Third choice, third attempt, but I guess third time is the charm in that sense. In terms of supplying the rocket, because I know the rocket was launched from the Fingers, was Krieg responsible for supplying the rocket, or was it handed off to you by another group?
No, it was us.
Yeah, we climbed this site by the beginning of the war.
So you claimed it by the beginning, right at the start of the war, and you worked off from there.
Yes.
We
How many
secured
members
it
of
with bunker bases.
Understood. How many members of Krieg are there to be able to kind of just take a rocket for yourself like that, or was this established early on in some other channel?
We actually right now have almost 100 people active in the regiment.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kinda not easy, but easier than for some smaller regiment to handle a rocket site. Mm-hmm. Since we can have the manpower and the resources more easier than them.
Tell me, do you communicate to other regiments that, hey, we're taking this rocket site in the Fingers, just so you all know? Or is it more of just, you kind of just outnumber them? It's kind of a game of...
No, we discuss with people.
Yeah, we just go with other regiments, and basically they trust us, so they let us have.
Is it possible to disclose where this communication takes place? Which discords, or is that kind of a secret?
Is it in the Warden High Command Discord?
Warden High Command. So that I know there's all sorts of discords. I know the Colonials have at least 2 larger ones, if not more. And of course, that can be well debated as soon as I said that. But is this more of the central one for the Wardens as well, the Warden High Command?
Yeah.
All right. Well, in terms of the Cannonsmoke rocket site itself, you said you came down from the north and hit it there along that thin strip of land connecting from Judicium. Is that correct?
Connecting, we nuked from Minos. I was the
from Minos, okay.
Yeah, I was across the river, and I aimed for the coastal gun, and the rocket hit the town hall.
That actually makes sense considering the blast radius of things that were destroyed. So all of the coastal elements, all the seaport, the shipyard, and as you said, the coastal gun, were all taken out immediately. Was there any doubt that you would hit the town, that you might miss the town base?
No, we knew that by aiming at the coastal gun, we would hit the town base.
You did the math on that one.
Yeah.
Yes.
80 meters, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it's 8 meters.
Okay, because there have been mishaps, and I sympathize with them greatly, because in the chaos of war, and particularly in the chaos of the battle, the fog of war, I should say, and the quick reaction forces hunting you down, you might just go, that's close enough, and then maybe not. But what was the Colonial quick response force, if there was one? Was it light? Was it rapid? Or was it?
It was really light.
Yeah, it was really light for a nuke.
There was maybe 3 people trying to QRF.
At some point, there were 5.
Yeah.
Well, I would imagine Go ahead.
There was a few attempts, like Hidetaro died, I think, twice, trying to nuke 3 times, I don't remember. And then we finally managed to do it.
Well, you had it. You were able to do it from the safety across the river from the captured Minos, the Warden-controlled Minos town base and that town.
When we nuked Cannonsmoke, Minos was not Warden when we did it.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay. Then I guess I'm getting the timeline wrong on Foxhole stats.
There was some fighting going on there. Like we were just in front of the tunnel hole, but people landed a barge next to us from Cannonsmoke to try to kill the spotter. And we managed to help them out.
You can't always get all the full information on Foxhole stats as much as I do love that website. But no, that's interesting. So it was kind of an operation to go in despite the area not being safe and hit this town.
Not really an operation, but we had a lot of people helping to nuke. Yeah. So yeah.
Can you give any details as to any other regiments involved, or at least shout out to any unaffiliated members?
There was our regiment, and we had some other people from other regiment helping us, such as one guy from Warden Navy, one guy from Callahan's Legion, and one guy from RNGR, more known as Ranger.
Yeah, and basically all the Southern Regiment fought there to maintain Minos while we nuked Cannonsmoke.
Yeah, looking at the map at the time, rolling it back here on day 603, 4, 5, about. It looks like the Colonial still had a majority of the region under their control, at least from what we can see on the sector zones. The Warden's breaking in from the northeast via Great March. But other than that, the Colonials looked like they were about to put up a fight, but apparently the quick reaction force was random and light.
Yep. We fought.
Well, is there anyone you can credit for the logistics side of things, providing materials, construction for the rocket? Any credit you want to give there?
I will say to our logistic guys in KRGG.
They do an amazing job.
They do a really amazing job.
And also 27th Regiment has been helping a lot in the south with logistics this war. So they helped supplying the Red River Patch when we were trying to.
Since the Cannonsmoke rocket made impact, has Krieg managed to rack up any other milestones? Were you part of any other rocket operations, or were you part of any other major breakthroughs in the line so far? I'm sure the list might be long from your point of view.
We did not do another nuke, but when Backer Ridge was nuked, we decided to change area of operation, and we switched to center. So we pushed through Lockmore and Jade Cove, and we took both regions in 2 days. With the help of other regiments.
48 hours.
2 days.
Yeah. 2.5.
Yeah, maybe 2.5. But it was really quick.
We shelled Fairmore to death with 4 cannons. And then we managed all the way up to Jade Cove, and it's only Spearhead lacking now from Pana Coast.
Right. So approximately 48 real-life hours plus. That's 48 days in the war itself. So taking part in that central thrust into the Colonial line that has since managed to smash all the way to Fisherman's Row. I guess you can rack that part of the Krieg specialties. For the record, what kind of specialty does Krieg? What kind of doctrines does Krieg use here in terms of how you operate?
We don't really specialize on something since we have a lot of people. We do a lot of things, but we tend to do more naval operation with whales and a lot of landings. So,
well, was there anything else you wanted to mention here in relation to Cannonsmoke, in relation to any operations before or any offensive now?
Not so much. So
I think we pretty much said everything.
Yeah.
Well, I want to, if nothing else, I want to thank you for your time. I know it's might be getting a little late for your respective time zones, but for the KRGG regiment, Hidetaro, your English was excellent, and Xyara, your English as well. Xyara, am I detecting? I'm going to take a guess from the lowlands. Am I going to guess the Netherlands?
No.
German?
No.
Oh gosh, French as well.
No.
Oh, okay, all right. That was my three guesses. Well,
I'm from
comfortable?
Switzerland.
Switzerland. Okay, I can hear it now. All right. All right. Well, in any case, I want to thank you both for your time and here representing Krieg, and thanks for all the information. I did not know that was part of. It was kind of connected with the Kalokai fight. Sorry, I should say the Bakai Ridge fight. So those two stories are intertwined. So for the record, this is part of the another example of the ongoing connectedness and the wonders that is Foxhole. But yes, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
ANZAC Day is a national day of remembrance in Australia and New Zealand, observed annually on April 25th, commemorating the real-life Australian and New Zealand Army Corps, or ANZAC. In Foxhole, the Warden ANZAC Regiment is comprised mostly of Aussie and Kiwi personnel, and have made it a tradition to mirror this tradition in the Siva Valley Warzone, putting aside hostilities, making speeches, and firing off artillery in a salute. The PressCorps' Sam Clease and Gaspard LaFontaine have more.
War 90, Day 628, Howe County. I arrive at Howe County, crossing the Great Warden Dam, as I move north onto the Upper Peninsula. There, I see signs directing arriving wardens to the designated parade grounds. I see a crowd of soldiers following these signs before reaching a massive gate. As the gate opens, I am flooded with the sight of stationary tanks, artillery, and tents. These items are here on behalf of the 187th Company for their yearly ANZAC ceremony, a day to celebrate the lives of soldiers from the famous Australian and New Zealand Expeditionary Force, known as the ANZAC Forces.
Yes, ANZAC Day is a national holiday in both Australia and New Zealand. It's a day of remembrance for our servicemen and women and others who have served both of our nations in conflicts and peacekeeping operations throughout time.
My reporter colleague and I were invited to attend the event by the 187th organiser, Kruglak. Also in attendance were members from the 82nd DK, Spud, and an officer from the 999th, all of which had come to pay their respects to the ANZAC forces.
Let's do a little bit of history here, all right? I think you have better knowledge on the subject than me, but in which wars or conflicts Australia and New Zealand have fought?
Oh, wow, the list is actually pretty long. So as countries, Australia was founded as a federation in 1901. So the Great War, World War I, was the first real conflict that Australia got involved in. And I'm pretty sure the same is for New Zealand, because we were federated about the same time. As part of the British forces, the Commonwealth forces, the Australian and New Zealanders, were put together into Australian and New Zealand Army Corps, which was just a mixed unit of the Australians and New Zealanders, and we were deployed in various theaters throughout World War I, with the most famous being disastrous Gallipoli campaign, where over 10,000 Australians and New Zealanders lost their lives.
Eventually, the ceremony began, with all in attendance marching onto the fields in front of the podium. On the podium stood Kruglack, giving an introductory speech about ANZAC Day before reciting the Ode of Remembrance.
I will now recite the Ode of Remembrance, and then I will invite those members of the audience who wish to speak. I will give them their chance. They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget.
The first speaker was Kami no Ko from Spud, a man hailing from Israel, as he spoke about the ANZAC's collaboration with Israeli and Jewish forces.
Good morning, everyone. Good evening, good night, good afternoon, wherever in the world you are from. My name is Kami no Ko, and I am from Israel. Actually, we have an ANZAC memorial in Israel, as the Australian horsemen fought in the First World War in the Battle of Beersheba, and they were probably one of the most brave units that have fought in the battle and charged the Turkish and the German lines. Furthermore, our own Jewish brigade fought in Italy together, shoulder by shoulder, with the ANZAC forces during the Second World War. All the stories I have heard from different people who are not with us anymore, as they all fought in those battles during their youth. All they have told me about the ANZAC forces is that they were some of the bravest and fiercest men they have ever had the privilege of fighting with. So, from all the Israeli armed forces, I thank you, ANZAC.
Up next was 82nd DK's Cassandro, representing his regiment as an Australian officer.
G'day everyone, hope your morning or evening around the world has been great. I'm here today as part of ANZAC Day commemorations here in Foxhole on behalf of the 82nd Dread Corps as our Australian officer. To give a few words, as mentioned, there has been many peacekeeping operations, wars and conflicts fought by Australian soldiers and New Zealand soldiers from respective eras. I'd like to remember, thank and commemorate those soldiers who have fought in those conflicts and wars, peacekeeping operations, and remember those who laid down their lives, gave the ultimate sacrifice to preserve both our nations and nations around the world.
The next speaker was 82nd DK Webby, a veteran hailing from the USA.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Jack Webster, formerly a sergeant in the United States Marine Corps. I felt like I should come up and say a few words due to the long history not only my nation has had with the people of Australia and New Zealand, but specifically the organization of the United States Marine Corps. Anybody who knows a lot about history know that we've fought side by side with ANZAC forces through much of our history. It's often one of the biggest parts about military service is the sense of family you get, and it's not a family that you get from blood relations or anything. It's simply generated by the willingness to share burden, and that's something that we've shared with ANZAC forces throughout our history, and likely continues. That I'd like to thank members of ANZAC and show appreciation today on behalf of past and hopefully future times when we stood together in defense of shared ideas and our people. Thank you.
After he finished, the next speaker up was Sigma Nate M, who was carrying an artillery shell for some reason.
Morning, gentlemen. My name's Nate. I head up the Australian division in Sigma. It's quite new. I just wanted to say thank you, Kruglack, and everyone else who organised this. It's really special. I haven't been able to get to an Anzac Day service in a long time because I've got little kids, so I don't really want to leave the house early and leave it all to my wife to deal with. But this has been really great. I'd just like to say, most Australians have grandfathers, great-grandfathers, uncles, etc. who did fight, myself included, on both sides of the war. So I just want to say thank you again. This is really great.
Speaking up when called for any other speakers was Sigma leader Red, who gave a fairly short speech.
So, obviously we have a very storied history with the Aussies and the New Zealanders being a British person, and it goes back quite a long way. But I like to think that through all of it, and when times have been hard, and when push came to shove, we've all been there, shoulder to shoulder, fighting for common ideals, making sure that people are protected, making sure that people are safe, and more importantly, just showing some kind of brotherhood. Even if it's not a Commonwealth thing, it's still, we're all human, and at the end of the day, if people are in trouble, I wouldn't say it's a moral duty to help, but I would say it's a moral duty to care about it, and have some kind of compassion for those that have served. Thank you.
The final speaker of the event was 187th Tartan Clad, who admitted he was new to the yearly tradition in the regiment.
I'm not speaking on behalf of my country, but rather my own ancestry. Both my grandfathers fought with the Australians and the New Zealanders in the course of their lives. My father's father fought in the First World War in the Middle East alongside the ANZACs themselves. And my grandfather on my mother's side actually had members of the Australian Air Force and the New Zealand Air Force in his Lancaster over Germany. And I have to say, this is the first ANZAC Day I've ever been invited to, and I'm very privileged to be here, especially to remember these servicemen who fought alongside my own ancestors. So once again, thank you to all of you.
After the speaking portion was complete, Kruglak walked back onto the stage in order to finish off the ceremony.
Now that concludes the speech portion of today's ceremony. We will now conduct a 2-minute silence, as is tradition for these Anzac Day dawn services. The moment of silence, will be broken by the sounding of a bugle, playing The Last Post, which is a song used to signal the end of the day and call soldiers to rest. Our 2-minute silence begins now.
Only the crackling of the fire was heard, before a trumpet was heard amidst the quiet.
Thank you, everyone, for participating in that moment of silence. We will now begin a 21 shell salute for the departed. Battery ready. Loaders ready. 21 shell. Barrage. Commence firing.
Rounds of shells were fired before the crews dismounted and joined the rows of attendees.
Firing complete. Crew dismount. Join the rank. That concludes today's Anzac Day service. Thank you to each and every one of you for participating. Thank you to our guest speakers who said a few words. Thank you to our artillery crew for their salute. Company dismissed.
Kill some cowards!
Alright, we can kill each other now.
Party on stage, party on stage, let's go!
Everybody freaking hop in the tank and shoot each other?
Party on stage?
Holy fuck, leg.
Should I bring the battle bus?
As the cries for a party on stage began, everybody began to jump onto the stage and awkwardly spin around in circles. Some even crouched and stood back up in an apparent new trend. Suddenly, a gas began to fill the stage, and all of the dancers suddenly dropped dead. Gunfire erupted as the apparently delirious attendees began shooting each other.
Always wear your gas masks, folks.
Gas check.
Unfortunately, that included me, as I was shot in the leg while running away, leaving me in the gas without a mask.
I hope y'all take response.
What would happen if you just put on your fucking mask like they teach you in basic training?
Miraculously, I survived inhaling the toxic fumes despite coughing out one of my lungs, as Gaspard arrived and drove me to safety on his bicycle. This is Sam Clease.
And Gaspard LaFontaine. With the PressCorps.
I am now suffering from breathing difficulties.
An excellent report on something that, even though we break kayfabe there for a little bit and a little bit of immersion, that's quite all right for something that can bring people together in this lovely little thing we called a war game. We'll be right back after this commercial break.
This hour of PressCorps is brought to you by Coca-Cola. When you've gone full sprint with a backpack full of BMATs, swallow some sugar and quench your thirst with Coca-Cola. And make sure to check out Collie Zero, now for sale at your local newspaper stand or select requisition stations. Coca-Cola. Stay cool while under fire. Hey, we bought this ad time from the press guy. Listen to it, alright? I'm Luke, and the gentleman next to me on the microphone who received permanent brain damage from artillery and can no longer verbally communicate is Bert. I think. Right, Bert? You know, after a long week of fighting, there's a lot of blood, toil, tears, and sweat that get on your uniform. Now, whether or not all those fluids belong to you is your problem. But point is, your combat jacket is dirty, your boots are muddy, and don't even get me started on your crusty old helmet. It's freaking disgusting. But you don't have to be disgusting. Now, you can skewer some dude's guts out with a bayonet in a crisp, clean uniform, thanks to Luke and Bert's Lokenberth Cold Wash Laundromat, using our patent-pending 12-cycle cycling method of wash. I load all the clothes into a porous container submerged underneath the frozen Loken Lake, and Bert here uses a cycling machine to toss and turn your delegates until all the crud is washed off. Now, we do 12 cycles because we don't want refunds. And if you see blood underneath the ice, don't be alarmed. That's just us washing the blood off of your ratty-ass trousers. Now, we used to have a physical establishment in town, but it got bombed out. So now we have a small stand Bert built off the side of the road. Just pull up your truck and dump all your crap in the snow. We're going to wash it anyway. That's Luke and Bert's Lokenberth Cold Wash Laundromat, located at Lokenberth, Callahan's Passage. We're open to all factions, so don't shoot us, alright?
Now it's time for submissions review. The following stories were submitted by users in the submissions text channel in the PressCorps Discord, where, of course, we welcome all stories, whether or not they manage to make it on the air. It depends on how much effort you want to put into it. It's hard to say. We don't really have a hard metric or you put in this amount of work or this amount of words into it, but we'll take it if you got it. If anything else, even if we don't get it mentioned here under the show, it is put into the public record for search engines and for later use. So feel free to stop by PressCorps World Headquarters to the Discord link below. Well, our first submission comes in, once again, from the Jade Cove Herald. Their headline here, Legion bombs Bakai. We'll never figure it out, but the Legion bombs Bakai is going to be their top story, and appropriately enough, plenty of action to be had there. We just found out that the extension of, the battle in Calakai was an extension of the rocket operation that hit Cannonsmoke. Originally, we heard it from Krieg themselves, the ones who built and launched the rocket, that the whole purpose of that strike was to cut off the supplies to this town. And we'll hear the reporting from the Herald's point of view here. Quoting reading the article, Legion rubbles Bakai Ridge. In a highly controversial move by Legionary High Command, the order was issued to rubble Bakai Ridge via strategic rocket strike after several major breaches in the city's defenses saw Wardens wresting control of the city center from local defense forces. Legionary forces in Buckeye Ridge had been under siege by the combined forces of Sievish Army Group South for over 2 months before the city center was lost. Fierce fighting was still reportedly ongoing in and around the industrial heights and the city's once famed docks when the order to transmit launch coordinates came in. This isn't the first time in War 90 that the Calakai region came under threat by Sievish forces. Roughly 5 minutes prior, major incursions occurred following a successful Warden counteroffensive across the isthmus. The Wardens, however, struggled mightily to maintain a foothold in the vital logistical region of Calakai as legionary forces based in and around Buckeye Ridge sallied out multiple times to uproot the incursionary forces before they could take root. However, 2 months ago, in an incursion of such a size that legionary forces had no choice but to fall back to the cover of the city's defensive heights and river, was launched by Army Group South. The city would find itself largely cut off with her defenders, suffering under intense bombardment and direct assault day and night before Warden assault squads forced the defenders from their primary, secondary, and tertiary defensive lines around the heights and southern bridges. A detachment of the Colonial Old Guard, trapped within the falling city, would receive the fateful order and stoically attempt to carry out the command. The COG boys fought bravely in near hand-to-hand fighting around the dock safe house for hours as multiple grizzled veterans met their doom attempting to radio in the coordinates. Finally, the blaring sirens heralding a potential rocket attack fell silent as Warden forces took a brief respite before clearing the final Old Guard from around the docks, convinced as they were that the equipment necessary to transmit the coordinates had been destroyed. In actuality, a near unheard-of failure of the Isthmus evacuation siren system had occurred. To date, the cause of the system's failure is still undetermined. The men of the Old Guard managed to use this rare event to successfully transmit final coordinates. Moments later, a massive blast would level Buckeye Ridge's city center, killing the remaining defenders and an untold number of unexpected Sievish soldiers. Now, we were not able to gather, before I go any further, this story written by the Herald's B. Brownie Meister, former member of the PressCorps as well. Brownie Meister is one who you can certainly rely on to give you a good take on what's happening in a certain battle. But having mentioned all of that, yes, there was a controversy surrounding just what happened in terms of that siren. There is still no clear picture as to what caused the siren to not go off, and for 10 minutes, the members of the Colonial Old Guard had managed to, who were, by the way, the COG, the Colonial Old Guard, were responsible for the first rocket that destroyed the Evil Eye rocket site, the Warden-controlled Evil Eye. But the COG taking full advantage of that, and how could you not? Because you think the siren's going to go off, and then it doesn't. But it turns out that it takes a certain amount. This is still speculation, no confirmation on this, but the current theory is that it takes a certain amount of distance to a controlled town hall or some kind of structure where we're not quite sure. Additionally, it may also be a glitch in the system. Regardless of what information comes out of that mishap directly, we can successfully, or rather accurately, say that Buckeye Ridge was indeed taken out after its defenses were, or rather its supplies were cut off owing to the Cannonsmoke rocket from earlier. But after a long and lengthy battle, the Colonials finally had to pull out and successfully launched their own rocket to hit what was their own town, a cut-off town. So this is not quite a Jade Cove situation. I think the consensus is that this was a successful scorched earth maneuver. However much of a success a scorched earth maneuver can be. Should also be mentioned that, well, I had something to say here. I should also be mentioned that Army Group South, sometimes, and we do it ourselves here in the PressCorps, but sometimes we like to dress up some names. It should be noted that Army Group South as well as things like the entities, I should say, such as we mentioned it earlier at the top, but entities such as the Colonial Defense Council, Valayan Northern Military District, or Warden Command and Control, Bukai Ridge, Joint Chiefs of Staff, Southern Battle Group. Those entities are indeed fake and rather made up of, ex post facto, after the fact. Most of the time, it's either regiments or groups of regimented entities working in conjunction with unregimented, or also known as randoms, people who are obviously part of a faction, you have to be, but are not part of a regiment, or maybe ad hoc groups of like-minded individuals, and or maybe just friends who may not be part of a regiment or don't have a regiment, but they just decide to work together towards this one goal, and then us either in the Press Corps or in the Jade Cove Herald or other whatever entity or media entity likes to dress it up and say that that was Army Group South, that was Army Group Center, that was, you know, the defense forces for this sector. It's all part of the role play. Moving on to our second submission here comes from Corporal Andrew Adjacent Gunderson. Time 0600 hours from the in-game date of April 29th. We do not have an accurate day, I believe, of the in-game day, but rather the real-life date of April 29th. But we'll go into this report here. Quote, "Let me tell you something for you to always remember. War is not an uplifting, hopeful, or positive thing. It is a mixture of horror and darkness beyond any one of your worst nightmares brought to the extreme. If someone from a war tells you stories that give you feelings of positivity or confidence in your ideals, then you've made the victim of a very old and very terrible lie. War is not a place of renewal. Rather, it is a cesspit of atrocity, a breeding ground for the things of which man has and always will do. As a first rule of thumb, therefore, you can tell a true story from a lie by its uncompromising allegiance to obscenity and evil. War is hell, though that's not half of it, because war is also mystery and terror and adventure and courage and discovery and holiness and pity and despair and longing and love. War is nasty. War is fun. War is thrilling. War is drudgery. War makes you a man. War makes you dead." Corporal Andrew Adjacent Gunderson, 4th Legion, 11th Infantry Brigade of the Warden Army. I'm not sure if that is an actual regiment, or if that is simply, again, flowery, dressing up, just the ad hoc groups of individuals working together. But lovely poetry there, reminding you that this is indeed a game, and there are wars happening out there in the world. Special note, don't forget always to, and everyone does this, don't forget to put the in-game date onto your submission, whether it is... sometimes we can cross-reference it with the real-life date, but in-game day is in-game day is our number one, without a doubt, hands down, our number one point of reference for timelines. In-game day there, but regardless, thank you to Mr. Gunderson for their report. We appreciate it as always. That's all we have for this week. Make sure to stop by PressCorps World Headquarters through the Discord link below and submit your stories in the submissions text channel for a chance to hear your story on the air. Also, if you have any major developments that you would like to come on the air for, a major operation, whether part of a rocket strike or a major battle or something that you think you'd be interested would make worthy of a segment, please don't hesitate to reach out through the Discord as well in the general text chat. Additionally, and finally, if you see our reporters out in the field, don't be afraid to say hello for a quick chat. There's a good chance that chat may very well wind up on a segment of its own. But with all that being said, for the Press Corps, I'm Geoffrey Jennings. Good night and good fight.
The Press Corps is a non-profit creative collective of artists, reporters, and players from the MMO video game Foxhole by Siege Camp. Our mission is to engross our audience in and amplify the stories of this unique war ecosystem. The PressCorps was founded in early 2018 by former PlanetSide 2 Radio Free Araxis host, Captain in Arms. It is a separate community entity and is in no way representative of Siege Camp. For more information, visit the PressCorps Discord through the link below.